it was a chat room chat. And I was like, that's lame. We need to
up the ante a little. Yeah.
There's
Yes.
a town across the street from it where the fireplace was from the 11th century. Those hybrid type events as being the wave of the future. And the great thing there is you got the best of both worlds.
We are the Front Page Pass, brought to you by Word Journeys.
Well, today, Alexa, we have a very special guest, and really the things that she's done with her writing business and also for readers in the last several years really epitomizes, ironically, what Front Page Pass is about, which is appealing to writers and readers.
Yeah, bridging the gap between both worlds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anyways, I've worked with Desiree Duffy before. In fact, she was a publicist for Voices, and then since then, her business has just taken off into the stratosphere.
Absolutely.
And right now, we have the privilege of talking with Desiree from France. So she's actually joining us from France, and she can tell us more about that later. Well, welcome to the show, Desiree.
Thank you, Robert. This is fun. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. We've certainly been looking forward to it for quite some time. So,
yeah. And you're right. It's the perfect convergence, readers, writers. And that's the thing. And I think you guys know this, which is exactly why you did this for the show. If you're a reader, eventually you just have to write. That's where it comes. It's so symbiotic.
Yeah. And also likewise, when we do these hybrid shows, it gives readers a lot of insight into how books are written. Because, even though they may not write, we all want to know the backstory to some degree about how something came together.
Yeah, still intrigued by like the background happenings and whatnot. So
first of all, before we get into BookFest and all these amazing things that you're doing, you have a nom de plume called Vanta Black. And I hear Vanta's been over in France scoping out some castles lately.
Yes. My nom de plume is Vanta and Black. That's what I write under. My real name is Desiree Duffy. kind of did the two different personalities, and you might relate to this. You almost do become a different person when you write, or different aspects of your personality go into what you're writing. So for me, that was a natural way to just kind of split things up. And when I'm Vanta, I'm a little bit more edgy, a little bit more hardcore, a little bit whatever. Desiree, she's buttoned up a little bit, rather professional.
That's perfect. You can be your wild side and your business side at the same time.
There you go. That's the way I like it. I try to conduct myself that way, so I appreciate that. So, but I'm kind of interested to hear a bit about yourself, like as an author. One particular work that interests me, since we're on the topic, would be Oubliette. So if you could just talk a little bit about that, I'm kind of interested.
Sure. So let me ask you this: do you know what an oubliette is?
Enlighten me.
It literally means a forgotten little place. So when I first heard this concept, you find them in castles, and yes, I'm in a little cottage right now, but I'm literally in Loire Valley, which is the land of castles.
Absolutely.
This is the Chenonceau and Villandry. So I've been castle hopping literally. But what an oubliette was a pit, like a dungeon, but very long and narrow, where you would throw people to literally forget about them. There were awful, dreadful places. There was one at Lep Castle in Ireland, and that's where I first heard about it, because they emptied it out in the early 1900s, and they took out the bones of over 150 different individuals.
Right.
And it struck me that each of those people over centuries, because it had been there literally centuries, had a story, but that story was forgotten. So that was the inspiration to write Oubliette. It actually has several different stories from different times in history of people who met their demise in the bottom of that oubliette.
Unfortunately. And then there you already kind of somewhat tell their stories and encapsulate on that. So I also dug a little bit up on it. And I know that you traveled into the Paris catacombs. I believe I read that. So if you could, to kind of get some inspiration for this story, so you could talk a little bit about that whole journey for you.
Oh my goodness. I think that was one of the most humbling
Mm,
experiences of my life. When you face death like that,
mm,
and for people who may not be familiar, there's been a lot of movies, especially recently, about Paris and the catacombs, where they're starting to become more well known. But
yes.
it's literally during times of disease, during times of cholera,
Mhm,
they needed more room in the cemeteries up on top. So they would empty them and take the bones and put them in the catacombs.
mhm,
And it wasn't, they just dumped them down there. They literally decorated the walls with them. And there's placards up designating which cemeteries and the years those people are from. So it's done in a very respectful way. And it's being down there again, it was just so humbling because you're literally looking face to face with somebody who died
mhm.
200 years ago.
And like you said,
And
with
to
all these
see
untold stories as well of these people who
untold
passed away.
stories.
So, yeah.
So definitely, if anybody comes to Paris, I absolutely
Mhm.
recommend visiting the catacombs. There's miles and miles of networks, most of which you cannot access. There's cataphiles. There's people who will go down there on their own and they have their own little thing. And trust me, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in the catacombs. I'm
I would
sure you
imagine.
can.
No, I just
There's
edited a book that was set in the catacombs with the French resistance during World War II.
Hmm.
So I got to see all
uh,
sorts of weird things that happened there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Uh,
a really good point because there were like during the war that they went down there. That's where they hid to hide from the
that's right.
bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of graffiti on the walls too, which is just very bizarre to see, people leaving their mark over the centuries. So yeah, it's fun.
I was just thinking the way this conversation has started, we just had our unofficial beginning of Halloween.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the intention to begin with. So,
Well,
yeah, I just
right,
kind of wanted
right.
to talk about your journey as an author initially, and then
Yeah,
bridge into other things. So, I was
yeah,
intrigued,
because
so I had to go ahead,
yeah,
Bob.
and I,
Sorry.
and I
Yeah.
wanted to do it that way because one of the things I
Mhm.
wanted to point out was sometimes authors, a lot of times authors don't know anything about marketing, and we have to learn
Exactly.
about it from scratch. But also, but the other thing is that authors should have the most innate sense of what their book is about. And I bring this up because you, Desiree, you started with writing. You started by writing oubliette, I believe,
Hmm.
and then you got into what you formed, Black Chateau Enterprises. But
Hmm.
what really interested me, and of course I'm kind of in the know on this because I was there with you at the beginning stages. But what interested me about you was that instead of stopping there, with being another digital marketing publicity company to serve authors,
Hmm.
two things. Number one, you were coming in from a position of in the know from being an author, but number two, you also had it in your mind to do something that went outward to the readers as well. Could
Exactly.
you could you could you just talk a little bit about that? Because it seems to make perfect sense, and yet it's one of the more unique business models in our publishing industry right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think this industry, unlike virtually any other, has such a crossover between readers and writers.
Hmm.
If you're a plumber and you hire a plumber, you don't next week go to a plumber's convention to see how plumbers do it. Like you just but again, there's something about reading and the magic of storytelling. And trust me, I think that there's something at the core of storytellers
Hmm.
in us human beings, which is the thing that I believe makes us human, makes us who we are. But to answer your question, so I started Black Chateau as a company that does PR and marketing, a
Hmm.
full service PR marketing firm for authors to help them get the word out in various ways, doing a lot of their very traditional things that would happen, getting advanced reviews, press releases, bookings, and stuff like that. And during the course of doing that, one of the things we did a lot was native advertising. Really quick, it's basically advertising articles. You've seen them before. You've probably been on a website and you see like a sponsored post or something like that. And I
Right.
found that a really good way to get our authors out there. We do listicles, kind of like the 10 best books to bring with you to the beach. best books to buy for the holidays, what mom wants to read on Wednesday, listicle articles, we've seen those. So we needed a consumer-facing platform for that. That's where Books That Make You was born. So makeyou.com is our consumer-facing platform. It not only has those listicle articles, but then we do contests, because doing book giveaways helps authors to build their social media followers, build their email lists. We put content out there. The website itself is getting tons of traffic, thousands per day. So that became our consumer-facing brand, fed by our authors. And then the next thing I know, I had other authors, other publicists coming to me. I started doing my own podcast too. And then other authors were coming to me. So it really, kind of to your point, Robert, really just melded together. Then COVID hit.
Yes.
And we were getting ready to be at the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books. We have a table there, a double wide. Authors do in-booth signings. We do social media. We do press. All of our authors are really excited. And then that wasn't happening. And we've done some things. We do Jingle Books every year, which is an online Facebook party, which is just sounds Jingle Books. I was like, well, we could at very least do a Facebook party. And then I talked to my website guy. I'm like, are there any out of the box solutions for online webinar type things? And at the time, like this was right as the pandemic hit, there really wasn't anything. He's like, well, I can build that website. I'm like, can you build that website in 6 weeks? And he's like, double dog that I can't. And he did. And that's where the Book Fest was born.
Awesome.
I went online. I got labookfest.com for $10.99. And after the first one, and I looked at the traffic and saw people were attending from around the world, and it's like, oh, why LA? I love LA, Los Angeles, I love it. But we changed it to the Book Fest because it has a global audience. And we have 2 days that we do now. Day one is for readers with the programming, panels, conversations, mostly geared at the reader. And then day two is for writers. And that's a little bit more like a traditional writers conference.
Right.
Panels about editing and what authors can expect and pitching their material. So that was the birth of the Book Fest.
Well, yeah, because I've seen a couple of other online platform conferences and festivals that have come up, but this is one of the best. This is one of the best ones. It's easy to navigate, and like you said, the diversity between having the two programs on each day. But what's really interesting, I'm going to share with our viewers and our listeners, is that the seeds of this are actually a few years old. Because back with the LA Writers Conferences, Desiree started prevailing on the director of the event, Tony Todaro, to let her program and theme different panel discussions. So then you fast forward over to Book Fest, and it's all these wonderful themes that aren't there in writers conferences in general. So could you talk about both as writer and as reader, some of the thought process you had about coming up with such great themes? I mean, these are great themes that you have.
Yeah, it was very innovative.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've been programming panels. It comes again mostly from the PR side of things, because in addition to enjoying doing media interviews, a lot of authors or clients in general, in my experience before starting Black Chateau goes back 20 years. I was president of the Alliance for Women in Radio and Television, now it's known as AWM. We did a lot of programming, partnered with Digital Hollywood, very much in the tech and entertainment segment. So kind of taking a lot of that, and even going way back, I used to be in broadcasting, I used to work in radio. So in a way, I like to describe some of the events we do with the Book Fest. They're a little bit more like a show. We produce them and polish them just a little bit more. Congratulations to everybody who's adapted and doing online conventions and things, but then you got somebody who freezes and somebody who drops and things like that. So we really make sure that we're polishing these up so that we can curate this content and put it on YouTube so it's always there. It's a combination of creating a live event, but creating something too that we can store and is a resource for readers and writers for many, many years down the road.
What has been the participant response in the, what's the word I want to use? And basically the, the directness or the closeness of the experience of the book fest to, say, a live experience? I know you've gotten really good reviews on this, but could you just talk about how you've tried to even lessen the distance between a real experience and a virtual by the way you're doing the fest?
Yeah, that is the tricky part, right? Because it is online. We lose that face-to-face interaction. We have chat rooms. We use the website. We have an iframe. Basically, it's a frame on the website that's fed through YouTube. So it actually is broadcast on YouTube. But if you go to the website, you can just sit there and watch it, or you can watch it on YouTube. And YouTube has the chat functionality already baked into its platform. So we encourage people to have conversations. We are chatting, team members are chatting. We encourage the panelists to be in that chat room as well, so that if somebody has a question or wants to learn more information, and things. So that chat room experience along with the panel kind of sort of replicates what it might be there to be there in person. And part of the programming too, we do live author chats. And these have they kind of evolved. At first, it was a chat room chat. And I was like, that's lame. We need to
up the ante a little. Yeah.
So for the
dance
next
on tables or something.
Yeah. Well, it's the adaptability.
Yes.
Right. It's like, let's, keep building up, just build it, just do it, and, tweak it next time. So what those have evolved into is 10-minute chats. It's totally live. This round, we have Scott Bryan and Anastasia Washington that are hosting them. So it's a little bit like a red carpet banter type interview, and a little bit like authors doing whatever they want to do. And we actually tell them, do whatever you want to do. You can just talk about your writing, talk about what inspired you. You can do a reading. You can write flash fiction. We've had authors make cocktails based on the theme of their. We've had authors read scary stories all dressed up. So, stuff like that is what we do to keep that interactivity. And we're, of course, encouraging people to ask questions and participate and, kind of join the fun along the way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And could you tell us, well, first of all, this event is October 23rd, 24th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the Book Fest is October 23rd, 24th. And can you give us real quickly the info for people to get on and check it out?
Sure, that's the easiest part, thebookfest.com.
That's pretty easy.
There you go.
And watch
Straightforward.
Yeah.
We
We almost make it so easy, people are confused because they expect to get a code or a thing.
Like, are you sure?
Yeah. And
totally free.
Okay.
Yep, totally free to attend. I think Robert froze on us a little bit.
I believe
there.
so.
I was just going to say too, people can sign up for our newsletter alerts, and that keeps them appraised of who's going to be there. We just sent out the schedule, for example. So book festers, if you sign up, not only will you get news and updates.
I'm sorry. So
There you are. You're back.
Bob, you froze for a second there.
We lost you for a moment.
My next question I was about to ask you is, different conferences or festivals or what have you they can spend years trying to really land big authors. How did you get how'd you get so many bestsellers and different authors and the breadth of authors that you got for the Book Fest so quickly?
I asked them. Actually, the very first one was surprisingly easy. And I think it was because everybody was experiencing lockdown going, what am I doing? Their calendar was clear. Mitch Albom was one of our featured speakers for the very first one.
Yes.
Just happened to know his co-host of his Tuesday People, podcast that he does. And so bingo, that happened. At the time, I was a fangirl, and am a fangirl of Sarah Kendzior, who wrote a book about, then Donald Trump and everything. And I thought her message was really important. I hit her up on Twitter And she wanted Connie Schultz, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning writer journalist. She now writes for USA Today. She's married to the Senator, Sherrod Brown from Ohio.
Mhm.
It almost felt like that stone soup analogy. We just kind of started building it, and people came.
Mhm.
On almost a lark, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool at the very end if we got somebody like, oh, I don't know, Danny Trejo to read Goodnight Moon? It was like a cute way to close out the book fest. And I thought, what do I got to lose? And I reached out to his manager, and he said yes. So he joined us for the first one. He's like, you want me to do what? He had a cookbook out at the time. He now has his memoir out, by the way. He joined us for the next one as well. And then, yeah, it's just a matter of asking people, and kind of going back to your point earlier too, Robert, thinking about what topics are relevant today, what's happening now. Black Lives Matter and women, making sure diversity is represented.
Absolutely.
And what are we teaching our children during COVID? There were so many issues that seemed important to get across. And the one common denominator that you can use for all of that is books, because there's a book about it somewhere. Somebody's talking about it. So that just kind of made the programming and getting the authors and the participation, fairly easy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that also comes down to your expertise and just kind of strategic thinking, that you do have going forward. So I was going to kind of ask, how that mindset has really helped you, not only with your personal successes, but with your ability to anticipate trends and be innovative. How that's been equally important in this business. Take that for example, or anything else that you've done. So.
Yeah, I'm big on innovation, and don't skate to where the puck has been, skate to where the puck is going type mentality, to quote Wayne Gretzky. I like to dabble, I like to experiment, see if it works. If it works, keep it. If not, adjust it, go on. We did the first bookish NFTs for the last fest, because NFTs are something that's kind of hot and interesting. One of the things we're doing for this book fest that's a little bit different is, and if you guys have been to writers conferences, that there's usually some kind of a pitching opportunity.
Yes.
Conferences have agents there, maybe some acquisitions editors, publishing decision makers, let's call them. And a lot of times authors can pay or set up times to sit and pitch them their manuscript. And they're usually done in these either these little rooms where they're off to the side, or in some kind of a big room, and they literally do cattle calls sometimes. So that idea, and I thought, that show Shark Tank? What if we kind of married that? And again, it goes back to, let's make this a little bit more of a show, but with all the respect and honor possible for those authors. That's where Brave New Writer came off, kind of pulling off of the Huxley, name. But I always felt like the writers are almost treated a little shabbily at some of these things. Don't stand over there. Oh, you only got 10 minutes. Well, that's not the way you pitch. What are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Oh, I'm not going to talk to you. There's this real kind of, imbalance, I feel. So with Brave New Writer, what we're doing, and what we're doing with the Book Fest in general, is we opened up a pitching room so authors can upload their pitching materials. Once they do that, we give them access to a knowledge base to help them fine tune those materials. A lot of times authors don't know what you're even talking about when you say we need a synopsis. And when they go and pitch and they don't have a synopsis, then they feel like they did something wrong. We want to empower and help them.
Yes, absolutely.
We're also giving them the opportunity, the selected few that are going to kind of take that stage at Brave New Writer. We're going to do a mini workshop with them, our friends at Roadmap Authors, Roadmap Writers, Roadmap Authors, same company. They partnered with us to help give them the pitching skills that they need. Because what I hear when I talk to agents again and again is, oh my God, these authors don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to pitch. They don't know how to do a book proposal. They don't know how to write a query letter. And you guys both know, because you're in this industry, you probably have authors write their book proposals and their query letters and stuff like that. So it's kind of the same thing, but then giving them that opportunity to step on this proverbial, this virtual stage and pitch. And we, as audience members can watch. We did a test run of this. And the feedback I got from the authors and the people who were watching is, oh, wow. Now I understand what you mean when they say, don't pitch this way. We're showing, not telling authors how to pitch, and
Right.
helping them get ready. So that's kind of the combination of ideas there. And then on top of that, Catherine Sands, right, Robert?
Yep.
I adore her. She's amazing. She's like, Desiree, I want to do something called Critique Bar. I'm like, okay, Catherine, what's Critique Bar? She's like, an agent and an author, they walk into a bar together. I'm like,
that's always good news if you're the author.
Very true.
Right?
I wrote an article one time called Meet Me at the Bar, and it's all about when an agent taps an author on the shoulder at a writer's conference and says, meet me at the bar, that's usually where the deal is going to happen. Or an acquisition editor. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
That idea of this is a little bit more casual and fun. She's doing it with an author, New York Times bestselling author, David L. Robbins. And what they're going to do is that first page manuscript critiquing. That's what Critique Bar is. And again, if you go to a writer's conference, there's probably some kind of workshop where they're critiquing manuscripts or critiquing first pages. Robert, I know you've done that a bazillion times yourself. So it's that idea of kind of taking this, giving it a little panache. The personalities between David and Catherine alone, I think, is going to, have the entertainment value right there. And so those are just a couple of the new things that we're doing this time around with the Book Fest.
Wow. So I've got a couple of questions based off that. First of all, you made a really interesting point about comparing Book Fest to live book conferences, and also the fact that they pitch on a virtual stage. I really love that because in my experience working with writers, and yours as well, obviously, is right. What I've noticed is most authors don't know how to present themselves publicly. Mm-hmm. They just don't. And that goes for pitching, that goes for talking at signings, presenting yourself and so forth. And well, I guess my question for you is, moving forward, as authors need to learn how to, just do more and more of their marketing and pitch themselves and so forth. In the book conference world, do you see a permanent future where we're going to have a combination of virtual and live? And do you see where it's highly advantageous to the writer to do both, or one or the? How do you see all that playing out?
I do. I think your vision is right on the money, and I've already attended the OK City Writers Con a couple months ago, a month and a half ago. They decided to do it live, and even just a couple months ago, there were conferences, writing conferences, all sorts of events that were happening, and they got canceled because people, Delta variant, etc. So they decided to continue to do it, but then they brought in the virtual element, and so authors could still watch. And I was so impressed with the technology, mm-hmm. The way they're able to distribute that content. So I see that as those hybrid type events as being the wave of the future. And the great thing there is you got the best of both worlds, because you've got people who can connect and be there live if they have the means and they're fully vaccinated, etc. But if they need to stay home or they don't have the means to fly all the way to OK City or wherever, they can attend these conferences from anywhere. And that's the neat thing too, is there's a lot of writers' conferences, a lot of very specialized ones, depending upon your genre.
Yes.
So able to attend maybe that romance writers or the mystery writers conferences that you might not necessarily be close enough to, I think that's a great opportunity in the future for writers.
Yes, yeah. That is kind of the silver lining in the entire thing as far as the publishing industry is concerned. So,
and the other thing I brought up was pitching and learning how to pitch, learning how to write queries and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And we work with a number of authors, and I mean, you and I haven't talked in a while, Desiree, but we agent a little bit now too. And nice. So, and it's all about the pitch. And I'll give you a couple examples. We have two authors, both novelists, that we've gotten, we've got 25 major publisher eyeballs on each of their manuscripts now. The reason why is the query letter. First of all, they both knew how to write them. And secondly, I tweaked it and so forth, and then we dialed in the pitch. But I think what you're doing, offering materials and resources that's absolutely huge. I mean,
Yes.
thank you on behalf of all authors in the world, because you're right. At a writers conference, when we're in the pitch rooms, you know, each of us that are on the receiving end, acquisition editors, agents, blah, 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 we all have our own ways of going about things. And some people are more blunt than others in saying, no, this isn't good enough. Although I personally think it's really important to be honest with every writer. You know, if it isn't good enough, some way of,
Very true.
you know, find some way of helping them get to good, whether it's take workshops, what have you. But to that, what do you think are the 2 or 3 things that are absolutely the most crucial for writers to know when pitching?
Oh, I think you covered a lot of it right there. Having their pitch materials and being able to deliver their pitch. And even more specifically is getting help before you get to that level. The great thing about a writer's conference, and again, now it's open up, so there's no excuse to not attend, is you start to really understand what the industry is about by being able to talk to people who are doing it, attending panels and sessions. Do you have the right stuff is the name of one of our panels we're doing too. And it is for people who are just thinking about becoming authors. Like, these are literally going to be the things that you should expect today. You're going to be asked things like, what's your author platform?
Yes.
How many followers do you have on Instagram? How big's your email list? How many books? Is this the first book in a series? Oh, it's 1 book. You know, they're thinking like marketers. That's the key. And what I always want authors to realize is that when you're pitching your book, that beautiful, wonderful story is one thing. Don't get me wrong, but there's 4,000 beautiful, wonderful stories that are released every day. What the publishing industry wants to know, what publishers want, is to know that this is the first book, in a 5-book series, and you've already got the second one written, so it's almost ready to go. The other ones are outlined, because then they see the marketability of, this isn't 1 product, it's 5 products. They're going to get behind it. If you've got 5 Instagram followers, it's like, well, what's the market for this? What is this author going to do to market this, as opposed to the author who has 5,000 Instagram followers? So just kind of thinking like a marketer a little, I think, is important for authors to do, because a lot of times they get told these things that they have to do, but they don't understand the why. I have authors come to me all the time. Well, they want me to do social media. I don't want to do social media. Can you do my media for me? And I'm like, what they really want to know is, do you have an audience? And I can build an audience for you, but are you going to engage that audience?
Exactly.
Happen when your book comes out and you now have to tweet about it, you know? So understanding why, I think, is so important for authors nowadays. And then I'm just going to underscore what you said. You asked for 2 or 3 things, you know, just making sure that you're working with people that can help you. You know, whether it's an editor or beta readers, somebody, a content editor. Oh my gosh, content and developmental editors are the very first type of editor that you need to talk to as an author. Don't let anybody tell you that they're going to go straight to copy editing for you, because I see so many stories that need to be fleshed out, or they need something. And again, you have those authors that feel they're supposed to be doing this alone. They haven't been to those writers' conferences to kind of know what they're supposed to do. So I'll have authors come to me ready to promote their book, ready to publish it. They want me to help self-publish it. And I'm like, well, yeah, it doesn't have any typos, but it also doesn't have the great character development that you probably should have for this YA novel. So that, I think, is probably one of the other most important things too, is just making sure you get your network and the right people to help you at the right times.
Well, anyways, you know, concerning that, I was going to ask you to kind of delve into the importance of, for authors, cohesive branding, design, messaging, so forth, that an author really needs to implement nowadays. Because like you said, you know, there's just been a little bit of a transition over the years as far as what authors do need to focus on. They need to kind of be in that marketing mindset, so to speak. So if you could kind of discuss the importance of that, and, you know, to a lot of authors that don't necessarily understand that, you know, why that is of equal importance now as having a good story.
Yeah, it ties back into that author platform and branding.
Yes.
Branding me is it's foundational. It's the first
Yes.
thing you, and then the very first thing you do is figure out who your audience is, because that ties into what your brand message and what your brand
Exactly.
should be. So I see it all the time. Oh, I'm a YA author. Oh, which YA authors do you read? I don't read YA. Oh my God.
I just write it.
What kind of groups are you in?
We're laughing, but it's really not funny.
It's true.
Hey, I've been there before, so I can laugh because I've done that before years and years ago. Inexperienced me, so.
Well, you were YA at the time. You were like 15.
Very true. Very true. So yeah, it's also nice to see you talk about the innovation, like the new resources for authors, because I've been in the hot seat before, pitching my book to agents at a very young age, and somewhat inexperienced until Bob started mentoring me. So I think about the things that you have that you guys do now, and if I had that, and a lot of authors can say the same, having that and that kind of knowledge back then would have really been helpful. So I think that's great.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the core of branding, right? Is knowing your audience and what brand are you going to represent to them. And it influences your website, your Instagram, what social media you're even on. If you are YA, you should be on Instagram, and you should be on BookTok. You should be on TikTok, and you should be hashtagging the heck out of BookTok. So there's just, you kind of make sure that your brand is matching your target audience and that you're there for them, because that's the sweet formula that authors, I think, sometimes miss.
Yeah. And getting back to BookFest for a second, and some of your panels on the reading side, could you share with us a few of the panels on the Readers' Day for BookFest? Because, like I said earlier, the themes I saw are just really magnificent, and I just wanted you to share a few of them.
Oh, sure. So on the Readers' Day, we plucked out several genres that we wanted to cover this time. And I mentioned children before. I really think that reading to children, educating our children is so important right now. So one of our very first conversations is with Mark Kennedy Shriver. He wrote a children's book called 10 Hidden Heroes. And it's about finding the everyday heroes in our lives. It's an amazing book. He's also the founder of the Save the Children's Network. He has done so much as a legislator as well. He wrote a book about his father and Pope Francis. And his whole message underneath is about giving service. So that's what that conversation is going to be about. And from there, we're going to fall into the next panel, which is about children's literature. And we have several authors actually from around the world. We have an author who will be joining us from South Korea. We have somebody from Germany. We have several authors from the United States. So that's going to be fun. We wanted to touch on the season. It's scary book reading time, like you said. It's Halloween. So we have a panel that combines some of those scary, more suspenseful genres, mystery, thrillers, and horrors. Those types of books, and reading those types of books, especially this time of year, are just so delicious. So we have several authors representing those different genres. And a lot of times there's crossover with those genres too. And then we have fantasy. We're talking about, fantasy and mythology on a panel discussion. And from there, we're going to go into a conversation. Conversations are one-on-ones, by the way, with Helen Wecker. She is the author of The Golem and the Genie, and she has in her follow-up novel too. It was just a breakthrough novel. And she does such a fabulous job of mashing up the genres. She's got fantasy in there. It's kind of like an urban fantasy, horror, gothic romance. So we have that conversation with her. So that's pretty much the programming on day one for readers. And then, like I mentioned before, we go into those live author chats after that, where we have several of the authors that you've seen during the day join us, and other authors too, and they're going to be doing all sorts of fun stuff.
How fun. That's going to be really nice. So let's see. So how much longer, what other castles are you going to see while you're in France?
What castles? I can spend all day in all the castles. We went to Chenonceau, which is my favorite castle. We went to Villandry, where I was blown away by the sweeping gardens. We went to this little castle. I got the thing right here. It's actually a castle. I found out there's a difference between a castle and a chateau. Chateau de Montbrun, which is an English castle, and apparently it's where Richard the Lionheart drew his last breath. And so we had to go visit there. And if you guys have ever played Dungeons and Dragons, and you know how like the team always goes and hangs out at this tavern or this inn, there's a tavern across the street from it where the fireplace was from the 11th century.
Wow.
It was this moaning, groaning, charred hole, and this tavern was just so ancient, and you just felt like you walked into a medieval tavern while traveling along the road. Absolutely magical. So yeah, those are just a few of the places I've been so far, and I want to go to Amboise Castle again. Leonardo da Vinci is buried there. We go to Clos Lucé. That is the estate or the house that he lived during the last 3 years of his life. And the gardens there, again, just so beautiful. And they have replicas of so many of his inventions, from the tank that he made to the different, war devices, and the Archimedes wheel that helps bring water up to the surface.
Fascinating.
Just amazing. But one of the cool things, I didn't even know it was here. We stumbled across it because we wanted to go see Notre Dame, even though you can't get in because of the fire. We're still doing the reconstruction. So we did our photo out in front of it. And then off to the side, they had this little exhibit. I'm like, what's that? What's underground? They have this exhibit underground that you can go through. And this is just so French. They kind of made this bizarre mashup. It's partially the streets and roads and stairs from when it was an ancient Roman place. And used to go people by. So you're looking at the roads, the baths. They had Roman baths, the actual stones that were, just centuries and centuries old. And then on the flip side of this little tour is an homage to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And reading, Victor Hugo, if you're walking around Paris, Victor Hugo's everywhere. And, just realizing this is going to tie into books and storytellers. When he wrote that, Notre Dame wasn't a famous place. Like, actually, after the French Revolution, and with that gaudy Gothic architecture, the French were not into it. They had no desire to restore that or save that place, just like so many churches. But it was that book, that imaginative book of fiction, Quasimodo and Esmeralda, that almost inspired the French people to want to preserve Notre Dame. That's why we have Notre Dame today. And that's actually why so many French places were preserved. It kind of gave a new perspective to people. And I just thought that was really an inspiration to any writer. If you're wondering, well, is my book going to matter? Is it going to help? Does fiction, does storytelling help move people or make any changes in the world? And I think that's an excellent example of how, yeah, it can.
You think you'll come away from this trip wanting to write any more books yourself?
Well, I would be lying to you if I didn't say I've been doing some writing while I'm here.
Oh, okay.
No
spoilers. We'll just leave it at that. Right. Looking forward to it, though.
Yeah, that's. I can relate to Desiree's struggles writing, because the one and only time that I even block out time anymore to write new material is NaNoWriMo, so November, and every time I do that, I write a first draft of a book. I get most of it done in that month. But that's it. I just, just when you get busy, you just can't write. So, yeah. So anyways, so tell us, so you started Black Chateau. This started all of this almost 5 years ago now, or maybe it's been 5 years. And how has that evolved from what you originally started?
Oh, it's grown by leaps and bounds. At first I thought, okay, I'll run this almost as an independent contractor. I was a sole proprietorship. I can do full service PR and marketing. And I was only a couple of months into it when I realized I was getting clients, I was getting calls, I was getting, people needing help. And I brought in Bree, my daughter, actually, to help. Interesting story there. She was just 2 months away from her wedding. I was like, I'm not hiring my daughter, who's a bridezilla at this moment in time, to
Uh-oh.
help my company, because that's like a lot of eggs in one basket, you know. My husband, to his credit, Dave was like, you got nothing to lose. Hire her for a couple of months. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And she's been with me ever since, and just has turned it almost instantly into a family type of business. So
Yeah.
we have team members now all over the world helping, and it's growing and growing.
Was that entire process smooth for you, or would you say a bit of a challenge? You overcome any obstacles as far as that's concerned, Black Chateau?
Obstacles as far as
from the business aspect of it and just launching it in today's industry, I suppose.
I think there's always challenges launching a business. It's something that I almost feel a little guilty about. But when lockdown happened, actually, I started getting even more calls because it gave those authors who had been putting off writing, not able to find the time. And so, I know there's some challenges within the industry right now, but I think if you're agile and you can pivot and try to find a way to turn a bad thing into a good thing, there's always those opportunities. Rather, I could have sat there like so many other PR firms and said, oh, COVID, can't do anything, not going to be at the LA Times Festival of Books, but instead I look for an opportunity. So, and I think that, even like we were talking about before, there's opportunities when you can start doing online events and when we can connect in new ways. So I like to always look at things as, I guess I'm a glass half full type person.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, that happened with us too. We took off when the pandemic hit for the exact same reason. People that have been talking about writing books for 20 years suddenly could. Yeah.
And were able to kind of hone their craft as well.
Yeah, but a big thing for you, Desiree, which had to have been a competitive advantage, was your digital marketing background. I mean, you're like perfectly suited to make that shift over into a virtual world. And I guess my question to you, prior to the pandemic hitting, had you been thinking about doing anything virtually as far as conference online or anything like that?
Nope.
Wow, that's awesome.
Never crossed my mind. Again, we do Jingle Books, which was an online Facebook party. I always liked doing online type events, but nothing of that magnitude. And it's almost because the industry wouldn't have accepted it. There's so many times where even just scheduling a call with somebody. I mean, we were using Zoom before anybody knew that Zoom was a thing.
Right.
And I would often say, hey, do you want to just Zoom? What? You want me to do what? and now our grandparents are Zooming, right? It's
true.
So everybody kind of caught up. It was actually just opened up so many opportunities, even in the PR world. No, it's not a matter of driving to the station to get the person in front of the microphone there and setting all of the logistics and everything. It's okay, your client, can you turn on Zoom? Okay, do it at this time. And this podcast or this radio show or TV show is going to talk to you. So in a way, the technology and the fact that people suddenly became accustomed to using it was a real advantage.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe, but we're just about out of time here. So once again, I want to let everyone know that the Book Fest is going to be on October 23rd and 24th. The website is thebookfest.com. And then the websites for Desiree's other two, for Black Chateau Enterprise, it's blackchateauenterprises.com, and then also booksthatmakeyou.com. So Desiree, we're really looking forward to seeing the Book Fest, and it's been an absolute joy to have you on the show. And I'm really glad we got to talk about Vanta as well as Desiree. That made me very
both aspects. Yes, definitely. It was a joy.
My pleasure, guys. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate both of you having me on. This has been a really good time, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for joining us from France. That was really nice. Well, that was some conversation with Desiree.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a great guest to have on.
from crawling around castles and and the catacombs in Paris to talking about Book Fest. We covered a lot of ground. It was pretty fun.
Quite a variety. I have to say, a very multifaceted guest. So we'll have to have her back on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is a very special month for Word Journeys, and so we're going to have a number of shows related to it. Plus, being that you, Alexa, as well as our producer Trevor, are big Halloween and paranormal fans, we got a couple of creepy shows planned as well.
Yes, we do, and looking forward to it.
So we're looking forward to having best-selling horror writer Mike Robinson on at the end of the month. I've known Mike for a long time in the LA writing circles, and he's a fabulous horror book writer and horror author, and so he'll be on right near Halloween. But then before that, we're going to have our special 25th anniversary show to celebrate 25 years of Word Journeys, which is this month. And what I think we'll do there is, I think we're going to share with everybody some of the favorite stories of the past 25 years, different fun little writing experiences that both Alexa and I have had, and also just talk about how much publishing has changed in the last 25 years.
Yeah, kind of discuss the evolution of the landscape of it.
Yeah, 25 years ago, there's no streaming, internet was just beginning, so was email. Amazon was an idea, not a company. So there's just so much that's changed, and so we'll just kind of do a retrospective of 25 years. So those are just two of the podcasts coming up, and then we've got many more announcements and news planned for after that.
And a potential guest that we may have on is Sunny Dean. She has recently with Tora published The Book Eaters, which will be out in 2022. So she kind of wrote like a cryptic fantasy type of book. So that would also be a good guest for us to have on in October. So she may be joining us as well. So
yeah, and my final announcement for today is I would like to announce there's a forthcoming book. It'll be out later. It'll be out later this month or by the end of the month, and that's Traceless by Paul Bobrowski.
Yes,
who's one of our clients, but Paul is a phenomenally talented and diverse writer. I mean, Traceless is kind of a shocking novel. It's a thriller. It's just got all the right things in it, as just a taut thriller with a real intellectual component to it. But then his next book that he's written is called Gray's Crossing.
Yes,
starkly different. And this author, he's extremely talented, and we have the pleasure of working with him on these books. And I just wanted to announce them for the first time today. So Traceless will be up on Amazon within the week for sale. And then Gray's Crossing will be coming out in a few months. So anyways, that's Paul Bobrowski. It's Traceless first and Gray's Crossing.
Really anticipating it. So.
Right. And on that note, well, this has been a fun podcast today, Alexa, and we'll be back next week.
Yep. See you, Bob.
Okay, take care. Have a good day. And bye to everybody. Thank you for joining us at Front Page Pass, where we present everything from new titles to rocking interviews with best-selling authors and publishing experts, writing and editing tips, the latest on the bookshelves for readers, and live coverage of writers' festivals, conferences, and author signings. Our mission: to serve up the world in a thrilling, wonderful, and most adventurous new way.